I didn't sign up for the role of superhero. There was no radioactive spider that bit me. There was no mysterious ring that showed up in my mailbox. There was no underground league that pulled me aside and said, Steve, you're the chosen one. It just happened. One small responsibility at a time. One crisis at a time. I was trying to stop the addiction, covering the story so the outside world kept believing everything was okay with me, hiding everything to protect the kids, and also shoving down my sense of pride. I stuffed all my feelings, putting them aside and letting the addicts count more, until one day I just looked up and realized I was like a superhero. But it wasn't the kind with a cape. It was the kind with a clipboard. I was a superhero manager, managing a crisis nobody could see on the outside, holding a secret identity together in public while I was a pastor, showing up at every single function, every single day, while carrying a weight I was never actually agreed to carry. And here's the part nobody tells you about being that kind of hero. There's no origin to the story. You can't say where it started. You can't pinpoint where this all began. There's no single moment you could rewind and say, that's when I did it. That's when I put on the uniform of superhero. It just accumulates. One responsibility becomes two. Two become 10. 10 become 15. 15 become 50. And the next thing you know, it becomes your whole life. And because it never arrives all at once, most of us never stop to ask whether we actually ever wanted the role in the first place. It just happens. And today I want to look at how we get assigned that role, and I want to look at where you were when it landed with you and how you start setting this down. It's not about abandoning the person you love, the person that has the addiction. It's not about abandoning that person. It's just learning how to refuse to keep carrying a job that nobody actually asked you to take. I'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Reclaiming Your Identity, a podcast dedicated to providing hope, healing, and support for married individuals whose spouses are battling addiction. Rooted in the truth of your identity in Christ, this podcast offers practical guidance and biblical insight to help you navigate the challenges of addiction within your marriage. Here we'll find encouragement and embrace God's plan for restoration in your life. Let's walk this journey together, one step at a time. In almost every family or relationship affected by addiction, someone ends up in the role of manager. Someone ends up in the role of superhero. It usually falls on the sober parent, the superhero, the one that's going to save the day, the one that's going to make everything okay. The sober partner smooths things over with everybody and everything and puts everything of their self-worth down. The sober parent remembers which version of the stories and excuses got told to who. I remember that. That was chaotic. You have to do that so the story stays consistent, so the lies track with the right people. The sober parent notices the warning signs first and then adjusts their life around those warning signs, around the relapses, around the chaos, before anybody else ever registers something's coming. That role usually lands on the sober parent. That role lands on the sober partner. That role lands on the person who is the least equipped to handle it. And you never refuse it because you don't know it's coming. The role finds the person who will say yes, even slightly, even by default, simply by being the one who notices first and then acts. And that's usually the sober partner. Hello, I'm Steve. This is Reclaiming Your Identity. I am super excited that you're here today. This is a show for spouses and partners of addicts who are trying to find themselves again in the middle of somebody else's chaos. I'd like to welcome you to this identity series we're in. We're in number 4, which talks about a role that you never agreed to take. You became a superhero without even noticing it. And unfortunately, this superhero story doesn't end with you beating up the villain. It ends in destruction of your self-worth and your identity. But before I get into all that, if this is already hitting home with you, if the first few seconds of this is already hitting home with you, would you please take 10 seconds and like, subscribe, and comment on whichever platform you're listening on? Because it really helps the show get to other spouses who need to hear it. And I would like for you to stay with me till the end of the show, because I'm going to get something in your hands today that can help you break free from what we're talking about today. So just hang on, hang to the end, and I'm sure you're going to really like this resource. But let's get back to the story. So for me, it wasn't even really a choice in the moment. I didn't say I'm going to be the superhero. It felt more like an instinct, because I was a savior, I was a fixer. I saw a need, and addressing it just felt like the obvious thing to do. You see a problem in your marriage, and you fix it. That's what a good marriage is, right? That's what a good partner does. You see a problem, you fix it. So you multiply that instinct through this addiction by 1,000 small moments over years, and you don't get a person who chose to be a superhero. You get a person that fell in to managing a world of chaos. You get a person who became the superhero by simply being competent and being present at the wrong time in the wrong moment. It happens over and over and over again until the role has fully formed. You've become this superhero, you become the fixer, you're the savior, and nobody ever questions it, because it looks like you've got it all together. That's what it looks like on the outside, because that's the superhero role that you took. But inside, you are just managing chaos, and you are falling apart. Nobody ever assigned you to this role. You just morphed into it. I can trace some of the early moments now, looking back in my relationship with my ex-wife of 13 years of battling addiction. None of them felt significant enough for me to step into the role. It was just a phone call that I made to cover up some issue that my ex-wife had, so it would protect her. It was a schedule I quietly rearranged around a relapse or a time that she was passed out, so it couldn't become too visible outside of our family. It was the version of events I gave to friends and family, and I left out parts that would expose what was going on inside of our house. I was a pastor at a church. I kept this thing completely hidden from everybody. None of those felt like accepting a role. It just felt normal. It felt like that is something that I had to do. Each one felt like a small, reasonable sacrifice that I had for my spouse in that moment. I mean, we call it sacrifice. We call it love. We took a vow. We're protecting ourselves and our marriage. It was only years later that I realized that I had a pattern. I couldn't see it building myself as a superhero. It was just one invisible task at a time that I took on. And over the course of those years, it just finally wore me down. I didn't take the role. I was never asked to take the role. I didn't want the role. It was just assigned to me. So I think it's worth asking honestly, why did this role land on you and not somebody else? Why did it land on me and not somebody else? You were the spouse. You were the one physically present every single day. You're the one that took the vow, for better, for worse. You were there. You're the present one. You're the sober one. And yes, you may have trauma yourself, but you were the sober one. You were the responsible one. And none of those reasons are character flaws. We're not bashing you for having those thoughts or feelings or just because you're there. I want to be really direct about that, because I think a lot of us quietly believe that we got cast into this role because something is wrong with us. We're too sensitive. We're too responsible. We're too caring. We're too unable to let things go. We can't say no. We're fixers. And the truth, honestly, is closer to the opposite than all of that. Those qualities that you have, those traumas that kind of push those good qualities, the caring, the responsibility, the never can say no, the work under pressure, those are all good qualities. They really are. They just got recruited into a job that was never yours. You were never meant to hold that job alone. And especially you hold that job without anybody ever checking on you. Nobody checks on the superhero because you've got it all together. You keep it all together outside the family. You keep it all together outside of your world of chaos. So nobody comes to you and says, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? And most of the time, if they did, you would say no because you're the superhero. And it's honestly not what you would want to say. And it's a role that you never wanted to take. So let's talk about what the role actually cost you. Because it costs you a lot. You may not realize it now. Or maybe you're starting to realize it now. But let's talk about what it cost you. Let's name the cost honestly right here. Because I think it gets minimalized. I think people don't think clearly on what it actually costs them. They think they're sacrificing. They think they're doing good. They think that they're being the strong one. They think that this is what parents do to protect their kids. This is what a wife or husband does to protect the other spouse, to protect the family. But this role costs you a lot. And let's just look at the simple things that you won't ever think of. How about being spontaneous? How about living a life as spontaneous? Wasn't that fun when you had that? You lost that. It cost you that. Because being a manager requires constant monitoring. And when you have to monitor the addict constantly, every single day, and try to stay one step ahead of them, it doesn't allow for the kind of relaxed life that you have, that you could be spontaneous and go to the park and go do something. You're in a life of managing another person. There's no being spontaneous and being relaxed. You lost your honesty. In a lot of your relationships, you lost honesty because you're managing a narrative of an addict and you're trying to keep those stories together. The role costs you honesty in a lot of your relationships because managing a narrative often means deciding what gets said, what doesn't get said, what gets smoothed over, and even with the people you love, the lies, you're trying to manage all of that and cover for the addict and cover for the embarrassment and the shame that you have. So you're coming up with all these different lies and you're losing honesty with a bunch of different people, even people you love. The role costs you rest. You don't rest. There's no rest. When you have a chance to lay down and try to sleep, your mind's going 150 miles an hour. You're getting up, you're researching stuff on the internet, you're trying to find a way to fix the addict, you're trying to find a way to have this go away, and there's no rest for you. There's no time for you. You lost that. You're on call 24/7. You took this role as a superhero, and now you're on call. When that light hits the sky, you have to run into action. And here's what the biggest cost is to you. It's the most significant. The role cost you the experience of simply being a participant in your own life. You're now the responsible one for everybody else's. That's what hurt me. That's what I realized what cost me. That's what I grieved. That's what I really had to process, was I lost who I was participating in my own life. Managers don't get the luxury of rest. They're always staying ahead of the addict. They're staying ahead of the next problem before it becomes unmanageable. You have no time for your life. You have no time for your needs. You have no time for your desires, your hobbies. You stopped going out with friends. You stopped going to get a cup of coffee. You stop doing things that you like because you have to manage the chaos. There's also a relational cost to this. It doesn't get talked about enough. The way managing changes how people view you. When you become the one that holds everything together, people do stop checking in on you. People do stop saying, hey, are you okay? Because you don't need checked on because you're super tough. Or maybe you have friends that have tried to warn you, stop with this addict. You're wasting your time. You have to pull out of this. And you're like, no, I have to fix this. I have to manage it. This is my job now. And you've lost friends because they're like, friend, I'm sorry, but I can't participate in this. Call me when you think you can start seeing clearly. We lose that relationship. Even family members will cut us off because they see what's happening, but you don't. So it costs you some relationships. You look competent. You look like you've got it handled. So the very skill that leads you to manage a crisis also removes you off of everybody else's radar. The person who needs support themselves, the person that needs healing themselves, you are now off the radar. You become so good at appearing fine and being in control that people stop wondering how you are. Being a superhero that you never wanted to be cost you a lot. If I go to the Bible for a moment, we're going to go to Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. It says, hey, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. Carry each other's burdens so you can fulfill the law of Christ. You see, when somebody says that to you, they're saying that, well, you're doing what's good. You're supposed to be carrying this other person's burdens. You're supposed to be doing this. Paul just finished Galatians 6:1, where it says he was talking about restoring somebody caught in sin and watching yourself so that you also don't get tempted to fall into that sin. Verse 2 kind of widens out a little bit, and he talks about you're supposed to bear one another's burdens. And then if you read on further in verse 5, it says that, well, each one should carry your own load. You should carry your own burdens, your own weight. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually not. He's not being inconsistent in the first 5 verses. There's just 2 different Greek words that are doing 2 different jobs. And that's where people kind of get confused. Do you carry somebody else's burdens, or do you carry your own load? Which one is it? So the Greek word in verse 2 is baros. It is a heavy crushing weight. It is a burden. That's where we get the word burden from. It's the thing that somebody isn't supposed to carry alone. It's something that needs help being carried. It's too heavy. It's too crushing of a weight. Think of somebody buckling under something under grief, under some kind of pressure, some kind of crisis. That's the word Paul uses for what we're supposed to help each other carry. He always says we go through this suffering so we can walk beside somebody else and help them with that suffering. That's where he's getting this. I went through suffering with being a superhero trying to fix an addict. That burden I carried, that weight I carried that I was never meant to carry alone, I carried it. And now I've learned from it. And now I'm supposed to walk beside people like yourselves and help you alongside, carry some of that load with you to help you get through this suffering and this season of your life. Now in verse 5, Paul uses the word load. He says, for each person will have to carry his or her own load. That's fortion. That's where we get the word portion. It's a much lighter word. It's closer to a backpack or a personal pack that a soldier would carry. It's the ordinary expected weight of your own life, your own responsibilities. That's the pack that you carry. It's your own choices, your own daily portion. Paul is saying that's your portion to carry. That's all on you. It's not something you dump on somebody else or expect them to carry for you. That's the pack that you're supposed to carry, the portion you're supposed to take. And I bring this up in this episode because there's quite a distinction that matters. It's almost exactly the line between what I'm trying to describe as the superhero trap, the job that you were never assigned to have. Somewhere along the way, myself and you stopped carrying the barrows, the crushing occasional too big for one person weight, but we also started picking up someone else's portion, the normal daily responsibilities, their own pack that was never meant for us to carry in the first place. Now, you could go with them through the burden of maybe the trauma that they're walking through. But once they picked up the unhealthy habit, once they picked all that up and started making those choices and started drinking or started taking pills or started watching pornography or started being abusive, whenever that started, you started to pick up that too. And now that falls on you. It's your responsibility. You get shame from their failing. You get shame from their not being able to manage their own life. You're carrying way too much. Paul is not saying do not help. He's drawing a fine line most of us never got taught. Love is there for the crushing weight. Love is there for the support. But it doesn't mean absorbing someone else's whole backpack as well. It's not your permanent job, but that's the job that we've taken. That's the role that we've been assigned to that we never asked to take. Well, why do we do that? Well, to be honest, you're probably in the midst of codependency. You probably have some very, very strong traits of codependency, and you haven't identified it yet, so you can't put anything down that you haven't identified. And once you identify that, you can start to think clearly. You can start to see clearly that you have an issue of why you're starting to pick up all these other burdens. And if you go back to listen to a bunch of different episodes that I've created, we talk about a lot of that, a lot of why we do what we do and why we have codependency. Well, you're probably sitting there going, well, I don't have codependency. Yeah, I didn't think I did either. But most people that are tied to somebody who is an addict have codependency. In fact, a high percentage of those people do. Okay, well then how do we set the role down? How do I stop being a superhero? How do I stop doing the managing? Well, first of all, setting the role down doesn't mean that you're not a caring person. Setting it down doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you're becoming honest with yourself. It's understanding which parts of the job were actually never yours to do. And I tell people this when I'm counseling them. You have to make a list. Make an actual list on paper, physically writing it down, of everything you currently manage that belongs to your partner or somebody else. Their choices, their responsibilities, their sobriety, their consequences with other people, their excuses to family members or work, or if you're a pastor and at a church, writing down everything that you shouldn't be responsible for. And writing it down shows you. It externalizes it. It makes it real. More than just thinking about it does. And most people are surprised when they write this stuff down how long the list actually is. It's a great exercise. Then I want you to pick one item on that list. Just one. This week, just pick one item and stop managing it. Let the natural consequence happen without your intervention. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be maybe irresponsible to feel, especially for the first time. You're going to feel shame. You're going to feel like this is your fault. That discomfort is the role of managing losing its grip. It's not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It means you're actually healing and doing something right. Old roles have a strong gravitational pull. You want to go back into those quietly unless somebody else is watching you and helping you. So find a person you trust. Find a friend. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them you need help. Tell them that, hey, this is what I'm going to do this week. And if you see me stepping across the boundaries to try to pick it back up, tell me. You can't face any of this alone. That's how you set this stuff down. You have to visually see it on paper. You have to pick one that you know that you're doing, and then you have to let it go. I've spent years in the role that nobody assigned to me. I didn't agree to take it. I never was offered the job. I never accepted a job. And I want you to hear this clearly. You can resign from being the superhero. You can resign from being the manager. You never actually applied for the job anyway. I know how you got it because I had it. It's not abandonment. It's not turning against your partner. It's honesty about what was always meant to be carried with help, or by somebody else, or by no one at all except the addict. You were never meant to manage another adult's life by yourself. Put it down. Even just one piece of it this week, like we talked about. You can do this. This is a great time for me to tell you about Walk Right Community. Walk Right Community is a place I created for people like us. It's a place where you can walk right inside and not have to explain anything about what you're going through because we already know. Walk Right Community is a Christ-centered, in your identity, place for healing, hope, clarity, and transformation. It's everything that I walk through, everything I went through to get where I'm at today. And I put it together in a community online because there's no places for the people like us. There's no place for the person battling the addict. There's a couple of places locally, Al-Anon and different places like that, but this is an online community that you can go to anytime, 24/7, and start your healing process. If it sounds like something you like or something that intrigues you, if you like these shows, if you like my shorts, if you like the social media, it's everything that I talk about. It's in there, in the community. And it's called Walk Right Community. And you can find more information about that at partnersofaddicts.com. And I told you that I'd give you something free today. And if you go to partnersofaddicts.com, there's also a place where you can download free guides. There's 3 guides that I have that will help you today. And probably the most important one that goes along with this show is navigating love. It's identifying the superhero role that you're in, which is most underlined with codependency. You are codependent. And it has a nice little evaluation in there that you can take and figure out what you're going to do next with this codependency. Because you can't heal yourself from it unless you identify it. And if you say, hey, I'm not ready for community, but I really want to start healing myself, I have a couple of courses that are great for you. I have a short one that is about just letting go and starting the healing process. And then I have one that is a little more in depth that's over an entire weekend. And it will help you deep dive into this codependency, help you deep dive into where you are with a superhero role and how you can start breaking free from it. All of that is on partnersofaddicts.com. And you can also join our mailing list to get a newsletter that comes out twice a month. If that interests you, if you'd like to contact me and talk with me directly, you can book a call with me on that website as well. I want to thank you for being here today and listening to this episode. Please go back and listen to different episodes. There's a whole bunch of great information that can hit home today to help you, to encourage you to start your healing process, because there is victory on the other side. I'm living it, I love it, and I want to see other people in it. And as always, you're loved, you're holy, I'm going to see you in the next episode. God bless.